Hey, friends, you know that I just love being able to come and talk with you every week. It's a real privilege, and I don't ever want to take that for granted. Actually, there have been so many things that we have taken for granted that have been changing and morphing in these last few months. I'm glad this is one thing that is still there and you're still listening. You can listen on your phone, you can listen in your car, you can listen on your computer, you can listen a lot of places. You can even listen on Alexa. Yes, you can. You can say, Alexa, play Apple Podcasts, Sweet Grace for your journey. Yeah, and it'll find me. That's kind of cool. So I wanted to share a review from Penny, who is an RN. And here's what she says. She says, I discovered this podcast a couple of days ago while trying to find something about weight loss from a Christian perspective. There are some great podcasts out there, but so many are filled with profanity, and I just don't want that in my life. It's so refreshing to hear of Teresa's success with the help of the Lord. So first of all, Penny, thank you, and thank all the nurses and the doctors for the work you're doing, especially now. Very essential that we have the healthcare system that we can rely on. And thanks for your review. And yeah, I've listened to parts of a few of those podcasts that I'm sure you're referring to. And for me, I couldn't have lost the weight without God. So it's ridiculous that they will talk about how they did it on their own. But really, we need the help of God. I mean, He is a critical ingredient for our success. He's also our grace, our strength, and most of all, our hope. And that's really what I want to talk about today, is all three of those things, but especially hope. Because I'm just really afraid that there is right now an epidemic of hopelessness that has been sweeping over our nation, the world, in the last few months. Even as we begin to open our doors and peek out, we are still unsure of the future. We are unsure of what's going to happen next. It's almost like we are just waiting for the other shoe to fall. I had no idea where that saying really comes from or what it means exactly, but it's something that my mom always said, so I Googled it. Yeah, right, that's how we learn about things. So supposedly it comes from someone like in the 1900s who was living in apartments, they were close together, and in the middle of the night they were awakened by hearing what sounded like a neighbor drop his shoe loudly on the floor. And they were lying awake, waiting to hear that other shoe fall. So it came to mean waiting for whatever is going to come next, that we don't really know what that is, whether it's good or bad. We don't know. I mean, we don't know why the neighbor was loudly throwing his shoe, if that's what he was doing. Was he mad? Was it an accident? Was it a mistake? Was he clumsy? Was he just getting home and taking off his shoes in the middle of the night? Who knows? But the person lying there listening from the apartment next door really won't ever know what actually happened. So they are in a state of limbo, just waiting for something else to give them a clue that they can go back to sleep, or if they need to go and do something to help in some way. And I think this is where we really all are right now. We are in a state of limbo. It makes us feel very helpless because we like to know what's coming next, right? Some people are waiting to go back to work. Some, probably like Penny, who's a nurse, and our essential workers are waiting for a break or a vacation. For several of my friends who have lost loved ones during this crazy last few months, they're waiting just to be able to grieve. I mean, they're grieving now, but to be able to have that memorial service to say that those final goodbyes and what has come to us to be the proper way to really mark the passing of someone. Some are people right now are homeless. Maybe they're living on the street or in their cars or living with friends, and maybe they're waiting to get a job or waiting to see if their former job will still be there before they can even think about what to do regarding housing for themselves and their family. Some are older single men or women who are feeling isolated and lonely because they can't have contact with people. Nothing is as it should be, and everything is on hold. And that's a horrible place to be, to have your life, all of our lives, on hold. So the world is really reeling from the fact that we cannot seem to save people from what seems to be an invisible enemy, right? And so we stand with arms limp, not knowing what to do, which direction to turn or where to go, and everybody has different opinions. We are hopeless. That's where we are. Hope is exactly what we need. But even doctors, hospitals, governments, and leaders can't give it to us. Then the one place where hope is dispensed most readily, which is usually in our churches, they've had their doors closed for months, thanks to our government and our leaders who are really trying to keep us safe. But all the while, all this time, the evil one sits back and laughs at us. Remember, he's got one objective, because at his core, he is a thief. And he wants to steal, kill, and or destroy us and our effectiveness for the kingdom of God. He wants to steal our impact on the world around us. He wants to destroy our credibility. But more than anything, he wants to kill us, because that will take us out for good, or so he thinks. Now, I don't think the devil can really kill us, but he can encourage ourselves to do things that will lead to our demise. And overeating is one of those, and I'll talk about that a bit too. You know, in that same verse, which is John 10:10, God embeds a whole universe of hope, because God sent Jesus to the world with a totally different agenda from the devil. When Jesus came, he brought with him the ability to give us everything in abundance, more than we expect, life in its fullness, until we overflow. That's in the Passion Translation. And I love the way that version puts it. Let me say it again. Jesus came to give us everything in abundance, more than we expect, life in its fullness, until we overflow. Our hope lies in him, and yet we run to many other things looking for that elusive thing called hope. We hope our money will get us through. You know, that money we have in the bank, a little bit, or maybe it's a lot. Or if you have it in mutual funds, it's now dwindling. Believe you me, I know it. My husband and I have a little bit in mutual funds, and now it's a whole lot less. Now it'll grow again, hopefully, but still, there for retirement. But is it really? Who knows? We hope our government is going to figure out some way to protect us. That's part of where our hope is. Scientists and doctors, we hope they're going to find a cure. We hope we can hide long enough so this plague will pass over us and not find us. We hope that eating all this food will make us feel better about feeling hopeless. Now, although many of those things may help us temporarily, our real hope is found in the maker of heaven and earth, because he has a plan and his plan will be carried out. Nothing will stop it, not even what's going on right now. The evil one will try. He's kind of like this villain in some worldwide video game, but it's a real life worldwide video game. The problem is he has never been able to understand that there is a maker of this game called life, and in the final analysis, God will win. After all, he's the only one who knows every step we're going to take in this life. That's because he already sees our tomorrow. He knows the choices we will make. He gave us free will, and he's not going to violate that. But see, God is not limited by time and space. He's like this original world traveler, time traveler. He's not even limited by the dimension that we live in. He stands outside of time. He can see what happened to us in the past, what will happen in the future. He sees our entire ancestral line, past, present, future, and how they have impacted us and those in our future, and how they will impact those in our future generation, how we will impact those in our future generations, and all the choices that we all make. He knows us. He is the only one who really does. Psalm 139:16, Passion Translation says this: "You saw who you created me to be before I became me. Before I'd ever seen the light of day, the number of days you planned for me were already recorded in your book." You know, we follow God because he knows the plan for our lives. He not only knows us, he tells us that the plans he has for us are plans for good and not disaster, to give us a future and a hope. And that, you know, that's in Jeremiah 29:11, New Living Translation. In Hebrew 11, the writer goes through this list of great men and women of faith, but then Hebrew 12 starts out, "Therefore, we also, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses," all those people that have gone before us, that's what he's talking about, the cloud of witnesses, "let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God." Friends, there is a path that has already been marked out for us. All along the way, God has given us signs to help point us in the right direction. It is like a great marathon race that we all have the capability of winning. But in order to win that race, we have to stop worrying about what to do and just do it, right? We have to lay aside the obstacles that we have allowed to stop us. You know, I've always been convicted about the wording of that verse in Hebrews 12, to lay aside the weight and the sin which so easily entangles us. This is a race, and there are things that hold us back from running that race. Even though I know this is an analogy, I always saw those words of the weight as related to me physically as well. I can't run any kind of race if I'm carrying 50, 100, 200, 250 extra pounds. So when I weighed 250 pounds more than I do now, I could barely walk. And there was no way I could run any kind of race. I could still be wallowing in that issue and difficulty, but I know now, I even knew then and believed then that Jesus is the author and finisher of my life, and that he has a different kind of story he wants me to live, different than the story I was living when I weighed 430 pounds. I just needed to get on board with the script he had already written for me. You know, the truth is, God wants us to succeed even more than we do. And in order to do that, we need to stop whining about why we can't lose weight, why we can't exercise, why we can't stop our cravings, and make a plan for how we can lose the weight, how we can exercise, and how we can focus on something besides what our stomachs and our appetites desire. I know it's hard. I know it's not easy. I've lived it, so I know it. But I also know when we make up our minds to follow the path that God has already laid out for us, it will become the easiest hard thing we've ever done. Right now, our entire world seems to be on hold, and we may think this is not the right time to try to get healthy, but let me explain a little something, okay? This is a health crisis that we are in. It's one that we feel we have no control over. Washing our hands, using sanitizer, trying not to touch anything when we were out in the world doesn't seem like enough to save us. It might help, it might not, who knows? But what if your personal crisis is one of poor health because you have gained an extreme amount of weight? What if your personal crisis is not having the foods you want to eat instead of the foods you need to eat? What if your personal crisis is that you try to relieve stress by eating those feelings and emotions away instead of working through them? So the word hope in this day and time has come to pretty much mean wishful thinking. Like, I hope this virus won't come to my family. I hope we have enough money to make it through the crisis. I hope we can get groceries. Those are all kind of like, we don't know for sure. We wish, or we don't have a firm hope in it. Because hope, in the biblical definition, is something entirely different. It is confident expectation of what God has promised. The strength of that isn't in what I believe. It is in God's ability to be faithful. So that's why Hebrews 6:18 through 20 in the Passion Translation tells us this. It is impossible for God to lie, for we know that his promise and his vow will never change. Now we have run into his heart to hide ourselves in his faithfulness. This is where we find strength and comfort, for he empowers us to seize what has already been established ahead of time, an unshakable hope. We have this certain hope, like a strong, unbreakable anchor holding our souls to God himself. Our anchor of hope is fastened to the mercy seat, which sits in the heavenly realm beyond the sacred threshold, and where Jesus, our forerunner, has gone before us. You know, when I was super morbidly obese, I admit I felt lost in the hell of extreme weight gain. I knew how to lose weight by dieting, but I didn't know how to keep it off. So I would lose and then gain it back plus more. It was a horrible existence. When I was a kid, I heard my mother and my grandmother talking about how much weight I had gained and how they just had to keep buying me bigger and bigger clothes. I remember my mom saying, it's like she can't stop gaining weight. She was frustrated, and I understand this. She was frustrated at having to buy me new clothes on a very small budget. And as the oldest, there were no hand-me-downs. But this was the beginning of a lie that I began to believe. And that lie was, I can't lose weight. And it became like a truth that I had embedded in me, but it was really a lie. And these are the things that we have to root out. So we have to understand, what is it that's keeping us, that's holding us captive to these things and not allowing us to have hope in God's deliverance for us. I had allowed this emotion of hopelessness to become one of my core life values. My mother and my grandmother's words left me feeling hopeless. And I just accepted them as facts. I can't lose weight. I'll never be able to lose weight. All I do is gain weight. I wasn't very large right then. I was just growing like any kid does. And my mom just was frustrated at having to buy me bigger clothes. But when the feeling of hopelessness came, there was only one recourse for me. I didn't know any other way to handle it. I ate, preferably something made with sugar and flour, something like my grandmother would have made, or something that I would have cooked with her. But I fed the hopelessness, because the only thing I knew would quiet that feeling and allow me to go about life in a somewhat normal state was to eat comfort foods. And when I ate them, they would anesthetize my pain for a short while. Then, when that sugar and carb high wore off, I would need to eat more to get that feeling back. That would be anywhere near what I felt normal should be. Now, if this sounds like an addictive cycle, it certainly is. I continued to do this throughout most of my adult life, through various trials and temptations, always giving in, never taking a stand. But when I finally came to the end of myself and totally surrendered to what God had been telling me all along, my life transformed completely. The switch in my brain happened in an instant. The moment I recognized His truth. The truth is, I can lose weight if I stop eating sugar, and I can only do that with God's help. I finally tapped into a measure of God's hope. It was like a long, refreshing drink on a hot summer day. The reality of how to stop eating sugar was a challenge. I knew that God was the answer, but I was, and I still am, like Paul. I have a weakness, and that weakness is for foods made with sugar and or flour. Now, the scripture doesn't tell us what Paul's weakness was. It does tell us that he asked God 3 times to remove that weakness. Eventually, though, he realized, and this is in 2 Corinthians 12, 7 through 9 in the Message, here are his words. So I wouldn't get a big head. I was given the gift of a handicap to keep me in constant touch with my limitations. Satan's angel did his best to get me down. What he in fact did was push me to my knees, No danger then of walking around high and mighty. At first, I didn't think of it as a gift and begged God to remove it. 3 times I did that, and then he told me, my grace is enough. It's all you need. My strength comes into its own in your weakness. Paul learned that humanity has limitations. Those limitations, though, are not reasons to quit. They should lead us to understand the weaker we are, the stronger we become when we rely totally on God's strength instead of our own. My weakness for certain foods was there to help me understand that I need to rely more fully on God. Instead, for many, many years, I took things into my own hands and made the mess bigger and bigger and bigger until I got to the point that I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt I couldn't overcome the pull certain foods have on me without God's help. Yet there were times I was sure my issue was so big that even God couldn't help me. Have you ever been there? My lifeline was what God told me. My grace is enough. It's all you need. My strength comes into its own in your weakness. Or, as it says in the Amplified Bible, my grace is sufficient for you. My loving kindness and mercy are more than enough, always available, regardless of the situation. For my power is being perfected and is completed and shows itself most effectively in your weakness. So basically what this means to me is that as long as I was trying to muster up strength to overcome my addiction to food on my own, I had rendered his power essentially useless in my life. Is God strong all the time? Yes, he is. So why was his strength not activated in my life? That's because his power is only made complete when I admit my weakness and abject poverty in this area. I was saying I needed help. In reality, the help I wanted, and he knew this, was to keep doing what I was doing, eating what I wanted to eat, and get different results, lose the weight. This is the definition of insanity, and I fully admit I was there. I was insane to think I could do the same thing and get any kind of different result. So the first step in any radical change is to do something different. I wanted to keep everything the same, but lose weight. And I really wanted to lose weight. I really did. I had a lot of passion about it. I knew all the reasons I should lose weight. I knew the practicality behind losing weight. And I would even be eager to go on a diet and have great resolve, stay on it for a while, lose weight for a time, and then when I reached some kind of goal, I would simply go back to eating what I'd always eaten, and I would gain the weight back plus more. I did that so many times, and I finally just believed I was a failure. I bought into the lie that my grandmother and my mother had said that I can't lose weight no matter what I do. Looking at all the verses again, I saw it clearly. I had been looking in the wrong place. I had been acting on my own human strength. But when I did that, I was always waffling. If I really understand the grace of God, then I will understand his strength can't operate when I'm acting self-sufficient, self-important, holier than even God. This is when God says, okay, I'll wait till you really know you need me and want me. So he waits until I get there. And he knows when I get there, because it's when I'm at the end of my rope, when I've truly exhausted every resource, when it hits me hard enough for me to know that I truly do need something besides myself to get me there. I need God. Then is when he says, okay, now you're ready. Let's go. Any weakness I have is only meant to draw me closer to God. He knows I am weak. It's why he gives me grace. I mean, Paul fills us in about the purpose of grace in Ephesians 2:8-9. This is in the Passion Translation. For it was only through this wonderful grace that we believed in him. Nothing we did could ever earn this salvation, not even our faith, for it was the gracious gift from God that brought us to Christ. So no one will ever be able to boast, for salvation is never for good works or human striving. It's never a reward for good works or human striving. Through his grace, he reached down and rescued me. I would be truly lost without him. There's no way for me to get out of this world into an eternity of living in his embrace without his grace. Grace is God's gift to us. It doesn't just save us for an eternity in heaven, though. Grace is also power that helps us live out our destiny that he has for us here on this earth. So when I began to walk out what I knew was his plan for me, I felt his grace wind at my back, propelling me forward to health and wholeness. It's a place from which I can minister. It's a place from which I can complete my assignment here on earth. It's a place from which I can live. It's the one place I know that I have hope in Christ when I totally follow his purpose for my life. I am anchored to the one who is hope himself. I cannot fail when I totally rely on him. So that means that he will help me even with such seemingly trivial things as whether or not I should eat that piece or two or three of cake, right? Or whether or not I will drown my despair and hopeless feelings in a pan of brownies or a bag of chips, or whether I will choose to procrastinate and binge eat instead of focusing on the things that I know I need to get done. And there's been a lot of that lately. I've heard it's going around. God's grace is strength for my journey. It's strength that I don't have and I need desperately. It's strength for my soul and my spirit. It's strength that buoys up my faith. It's strength that lets me know God is with me. It's strength that reminds me that instead of trying to toughen up and plow through my confusion and turmoil, I can say with Paul that I will all the more gladly boast in my weaknesses so that the power of Christ may completely enfold me and dwell in me. For when I am weak in human strength, then I am strong, truly able, truly powerful, truly drawing from God's strength. That's 2 Corinthians 7:9-10 in the Amplified. Friends, hopelessness has no place here. Hopelessness really has to just go out the window. It doesn't belong in our lives anymore. And as we surrender to God each day, we will find renewed hope in the grace and the strength that he pours into our lives. Whatever he calls us to do, we can do it because it isn't no longer our strength making it happen. That's not what we're drawing from. We're drawing from his. And that's where everything changes. So before you go, just let me remind you that doors are still open for Overcomers Christian Weight Loss Academy. It's still only $47 a month with the coupon code on Overcomers page. And it's definitely one place where hope can be found in abundance. So the link will be down in the show notes. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. Until next week, sweet grace for your journey.